All right, well, I'm going to call the meeting to order at 6:03, and this is not being recorded. Hold up just minutes. And present are Diana Fetterman, April West, Janet Brown, Cindy Palmer, and then two guests at this point, and that's Chris Falls and Charlie McDonald, and also Ken Comia from Pioneer Valley Planning Commission.
I see Marla Hank's name up there.
Oh, and Marla Hank. Sorry, Marla. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm not looking at that screen, so that's why. Thank you for coming, Marla. It's so important to have you here. So the minutes I'm going to look at really quickly. Did everybody see them? They went out a while ago, I think. Or did I send these? Maybe I forgot to send them.
I don't think I have them.
Oh, I apologize. I forgot to send them. So I'm going to read them really quickly. Well, the minutes of April were approved. We discussed celebrate Southampton in August, but because of the pandemic, things are uncertain. Chris told us that there's no meeting of that committee scheduled, so we don't know what's going to happen, and any event that is held will likely be scaled down. Open Space will table further planning until the June meeting. Renee said she would email Ed Gibson to put a request for Open Space to become a regular town committee on the next select board meeting agenda. And I also asked Ed to address the renewal status of committee members' terms, and I'll talk about that in a moment. The Friends of Open Space have been inactive amid the pandemic. I have communicated with Dave Sullivan, president, and he had no update at that time. And then we agreed to invite him to this meeting, which I've done. Haven't seen them yet. Diana had no news about the Mass Trails application for the Manhattan Meadows Sanctuary. The grants were scheduled to be announced in June or July. Meeting of the Open Space and Recreation Plan Update Committee is scheduled for what was then next week. We discussed the need to include the Open Space and Recreation Plan in any discussions of the municipal vulnerability preparedness grants. I noted that the representatives of Fuss and O'Neill, who are the town's consultants on our MVP initiatives, had discussed on a recent webinar of the Mass Open Space Conference the links between open space and MVP action grants. Our committee will request that open space representative be included in the MVP discussions and decisions. Charlie said we should ensure that the owners of abutting property agree about access to the conservation area at Durrell's Path. Chris shared information about permissive easements. The landowner posts a sign that says access is allowed across the private property. She did not know whether this agreement must be registered or can simply be informed. Charlie said Conservation Works might help with clarification of this. We discussed the difficulty of identifying old or discontinued roads in town. I had a map dated 1960, which Randall Kemp of Southampton, of the roads from that date, gave to me. It did not show any of the older abandoned or discontinued roads. I gave it to Ted Hendrick, who was wanting to look at that. We discussed the question of identifying privately owned lands in a public meeting. April suggested we name only the assessor's map and parcel numbers on when we discuss properties, not address, and we don't cite people's names. We asked Mark, and we decided to ask Mark Walmsley of Kestrel to suggest local lands of interest. We also discussed ways of bringing landowners together, which had been a topic in the Mass Open Space Conference webinars. We will proceed with contacting one landowner whose acreage abuts Durrell's Path. We voted unanimously to pursue map 12, parcel 10 with a letter and follow-up. Chris asked if Mark Walmsley could be included in conversations with landowner. We're not sure. We'll ask his opinions. April said real estate listings had ended for another property of interest. That's map 9, parcel 1. We will continue to try to determine whether the land is of conservation interest. Cindy emailed the Greenway Committee chair to ask what lands they consider important for constructing the Greenway. No response was received at that point. We discussed changes near Alder Pond since the earthen dam failed, exposing land and altering the pond into a stream. Certain parcels are of conservation interest. We will seek to learn more. Janet said she is concerned about the draining of stormwater from a lot under construction, which she was going to be discussing with Randall Kemp. Charlie said that Conservation Works has completed a connecting trail at Clearwater Woodlands as contracted by the Conservation Commission. He also noted there have been some complaints about the ATVs on the property. Concom will post signs and other entrances. Charlie said Concom is aware of the Pequot Road weed issue, which has required several NOIs in the last decade to apply herbicides. The town's financial contribution to the cleanup would be appreciated. And then we said next meeting would be tonight at 6 p.m., adjournment 7:36. Do anybody want to make a motion to accept those or discuss those minutes?
I make a motion to accept.
Do I hear a second?
A second, Janet Brown.
Okay, April made the motion, Janet Brown seconded. Is there any discussion? None? Okay, hearing that, I would ask for a roll call vote, please, to accept the minutes.
April approved.
Janet approved.
Cindy approved. And Diana?
Approved.
Okay, so it's unanimous. Okay, so old business. The first thing, which I agreed to, but I don't see that we've seen any people from Friends of Open Space. I did send out invitations because we asked them to attend, and I said I would make it the first thing on the agenda so that if they wanted to move on, they could. The only response was from one of their board members who said she was unable to attend. That's Susan Ryan. So I think we're back in the exact same place. We'd hope to be supportive of them regarding moving forward. I also copied Amanda Kemp on that, who had volunteered some months ago to assist with the filing for the 501c3 application. I did not have a response from anyone. So that's the status of that. I know a lot is happening, and I know those people are busy. I don't really know where to go from here on that. Does anybody want to throw out any ideas beyond this?
I can't.
I don't know who spoke. Who's that?
Janet, no, I don't know how to comment on that.
Okay. Anybody have any ideas? I hate to see this dissolve.
Right. Is there any way to ask Amanda to meet a deadline of responding to you?
I think I'm gonna call her personally at her office, just as a friendly hello. I feel like I have that, I have that kind of relationship where I'm comfortable calling her at her office, and leave a message if she's busy and she can call me back.
Yeah.
I think that's what I'm going to do right now. Anybody else have any ideas?
Do we know what the outstanding steps that are required to get this completed? Have they been listed anywhere?
Absolutely not. We don't know what the steps are. We don't know how many steps they've taken. We think they met a few times. Diana attended one meeting, which was held actually at the Dunkin' Donuts, wasn't it, Diana?
Yeah.
Did you hear anything about that subsequently after you made an appeal for them to supply or pay for a bench?
No, because it was really just an initial contact to say that if we did get the grant, we would be looking for that. And I think they were in favor of it. I know that, but yeah, I just don't know that there's any point in Amanda Kemp, proceeding if there isn't enough interest and support. That's yeah.
Well, that may be, but let her tell me that,
Right. Yeah.
By the way,
it's a big undertaking, a nonprofit, I think, and we need, I've only just learned a little bit about it lately, and people need to be committed to it. And,
Cindy, this is Chris. Other than David Sullivan, are there other members that we could maybe contact? Would they be more?
Hi, Eric.
Hi, thanks for letting me in.
Sorry, I didn't know you were waiting. I apologize.
No.
Sorry, Chris, please continue. I didn't quite hear you.
Just wondering if David Sullivan is very busy. Are there other members that we could contact and just see what they think the future is. Is it kind of just floating out there and it's lost its motivational factor, or is there something we can do to help move it along?
Right. The other person that I included in the email whom I've had response from is Eileen Hamill. Some of you may know her. And she was very eager to participate and to be a part of it. And I know she had some health problems earlier in the year. I don't know the status of that at all, but she didn't even respond. The person that responded was Susan Ryan, who also was pretty eager. And Alison Wandruska was also part of it, but I did not include her on the email because I didn't know her email, frankly. So if anybody wants to make contact with any of those people, Diana, you know Allison. Do you want to just like run it by her and see what she says when you run into her?
Okay. Yeah, I'll try.
And I think we're at the point of informal. I'd love to bring it to a head. So if they're really not feeling like they can do this, we can, try to reconvene another group and see what's going on. I'd love to have them tell us, yes, we really want to do this, or no, I guess we can't. You know what I'm saying? So I will call Amanda, and I will also follow up with Eileen and Susan. And Diana, you'll try to run by, if you see her, Allison. Anybody else want to?
Yeah, I don't think I'll see her, but I can email her.
All right, why don't you do that?
Yeah.
All right, so let's move
I
on.
think the virus situation we're in has slowed down everything for everyone. We just have to be more patient, I think.
Well, yes, totally agree. Totally agree. Patience is something I'm working on with my personal phone.
And our interactions with Kestrel, they are collecting money for Southampton, is that correct?
Yes, if you make, in fact, I got a notice because I'm on the donation list. If you make a donation, which they'll send out lots of reminders that you can give money, you can designate to Southampton funds or Southampton lands, and you can split your donation if you choose. So if you want to give $20, you could give 10 to General Kestrel and 10 to Southampton or something like that. Those are options. So yes, there still is a fund there. It cannot be moved out of Kestrel until there is a bank account. So you asked Charlie about the steps. I know part of the steps are the filing with the state and creating a bank account and having a mail, like a P.O. box or something. You don't really want to have a personal home. That's my general understanding about how that works.
Is there any chance that they don't know how to use Zoom to hold their meetings? Obviously, if they would have been planning on meeting in person at Dunkin' Donuts or wherever, that really can't safely happen. But maybe they don't know how to use Zoom?
Well, that's a great question, Marla. I believe Dave Sullivan does meetings on Zoom, because when I finally reached him, he said, I apologize, I was on another meeting. The reason they met at Dunkin' Donut was right at the point when the town hall closed, before Zoom became something, before Dunkin' Donut wasn't available. So
well, I know, because they were at one end of the room and I went to the other one to be 6 feet away from them at that day, so.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't think that's the issue.
No.
But it could be, of course. So we could offer to say that we could support a Zoom meeting if that's what they needed. Once again, I think we just need to make contact with people at this point.
Right.
Any
And
other
if their
com-
group is small enough, it could be free. They don't have to pay for Zoom for such a small group.
Yeah, that's my familiarity with my book clubs. It's all free. Yeah. Good. Any other discussion of Friends of Open Space for now? Okay. So I'm sorry to say I don't have the agenda right in front of me, so I'm going to just keep moving on. Status of making us a regular town committee. I believe it's on an upcoming select board agenda. But in the meantime, I got an email from Ed. I'm looking for it. Telling me what is our, okay, here it is. we have to be reappointed as follows. Janet Brown, April, Diana, and Maureen, and I all need to be reappointed. Members at large, specifically Diana, you will receive a letter. Diana, did you get a letter yet asking if you are interested in being reappointed?
No, but I got an email from Ed telling me that I would be, and he asked if I would be interested, and I said yes.
Okay, good. So I guess you responded to that. Committee chairs, the CPC chair specifically, oh dear, we're getting an announcement from, why are we getting an announcement right this very minute from Ed? Don't know. On the phone. Committee chairs, CPC chair, that's Virginia. She has to ask you, Janet, if you want to be reappointed. Rini has to be.
We have to go through the election first?
No, it's an appointment. It's not an
We are
election.
elected. She and I are elected.
No, she
Oh,
means,
appointed to this committee.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'm sorry.
Are you up for re-election for CPC?
She and I both are.
Okay, well, you have to be reelected, but I guess that's coming. It's not until at least August.
Yeah. No, we have to wait for the caucus, I guess.
I think that's not happening. I don't think there's going to be a caucus this year.
No, she and I both are up this year.
Okay, well, anyway, in the meantime, you can be reappointed. Rini by the select board. I was asked last night at the planning board if I wanted to be reappointed. I said yes, and I was reappointed. And April, you have to get reappointed by the assessors, okay?
Yeah.
And then our two at-large members, our two associate members right now, Marla, we need to have you identify the rep from Concom.
Hello.
I just want to say this community preservation was supposed to have met last night, but we did not, and it's been postponed. So probably at the next meeting, we will make that decision.
Okay.
Yeah. The call is from Ed telling people that as of today, they put voluntary water restrictions on. Because, you'd go down the street and people are watering their lawn at noon. I mean, you should never be watering your lawn at noon. You're like evaporate. Anyway, that's what all the phones ringing are.
Oh, okay.
And I guess from Charlie McDonald is the Conservation Commission's representative, voting rep to as an associate of the Concom. He's a voting rep on the Open Space Committee. So the question would be for Charlie, do you still want to have that position?
Yes, please.
So
We never had an official appointment of him, Marla. So if you can let Ed know that, then he'll be appointed.
Yeah. Well, he did. Ed sent me an email that he said C. McDonald spelled incorrectly, but close enough. I knew who it was. He had an extra A in McDonald that it said he's on there, but the term is up. So, but either way, Charlie, was supposed to have been a voting member, not a guest,
Oh, okay. Well, I never got, thanks, Marla, because I never got the notice that he was actually a voting member. So apologies to you, Charlie, if that should have been the place all along.
Yeah, he's not a visitor. He's the Conservation Commission voting rep. But I will, Ed said that because he's appointed, from the Conservation Commission, we can do that at our next meeting.
Okay.
To make it, official again. But of course, we would just appoint him without asking if he actually wanted to do it.
Okay.
I will have that on our agenda then.
Thank you, Marla. So Chris, you're an at-large member. I guess we just could ask Ed to automatically appoint you as a voting at-large member because you're not representing any particular committee. Is that okay with you, Chris? You're on mute right now, Chris. Yeah.
Whatever you guys think. I mean, I'm just hanging around because I'm interested in what's going on, but I don't represent anybody at this point in time. Yeah. So.
But you can be at large then, okay?
Okay.
I think I'm at large too, right?
You are at large. That's correct.
Ed
So,
said that they would have to agree on my reappointment. I don't know who they is. Maybe the select
well,
board.
maybe we all need to. Let's do that right now. Does anybody want to make a motion to have Diana and Chris be at-large members on this committee? Anybody?
Motion. Janet?
Oh, so moved.
Okay, I think one or both of you made the motion and seconded it. Is that good? Okay. Is there any discussion about Janet and Chris being at-large members on this committee? No discussion? All in favor?
Aye. April, yes.
Hi, Janet.
Cindy, aye. And I guess that's it. Okay. Great. So I will let Ed know about.
Just one thing, Cindy, when I got put on the master plan committee as at large, I think that was a select board appointment.
You are correct. At large is our select board appointments.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Shall we
Okay.
rescind? Do we rescind that vote?
No, because you would
No.
say you're recommending to them
Oh, okay.
that they do that.
All right.
But
Yeah.
again, Charlie should have a vote. He is the Conservation Commission representative.
Okay, he's not the at-large. Okay, so the two at-large are Diane and Chris. Excuse me. Pardon me. All right, moving on. I'd like to jump beyond some of the other old business because we have Ken Comia and we have Eric Giordano. Am I saying your name right, Eric?
Yep, perfectly.
Okay, and I know Ken is well known to me. We're best friends, right, Ken?
Right, Cindy.
We Zoom on a regular basis. But Eric, I'm not entirely sure of your role besides coming from PVPC.
Yeah, I'm volunteering to assist PVPC, and so I'm working with Ken kind of under his direction to give him support in any way he can see to use me. My background is in planning, and I went to the Conway School of Landscape Design, which is now in Northampton. So I'm kind of looking to enter the planning field. And I've had some experience working on a master plan for the town of Abington, Massachusetts, and done some other kind of planning work. But I'm young at that and still learning. So I'm Ken's good mentor.
Well, I'm old and still learning, so that's really good. Okay, I'm all in favor of learning. So Ken is here as he is supporting the open space and recreation plan update. He's doing a lot for our town, but that's his role here. So we met the open space and recreation plan update committee met a week or so ago, and we know that that's in process right now. And one of the important, and actually, Ken, why don't you go into this more than I?
Sure. Hello, everyone. So as Cindy mentioned, I'm Ken, and I'm a senior planner at Pioneer Valley Planning Commission. Yes, Eric is here to assist. We have an open space, or the town has an open space and recreation plan, and we have until the end of June to finish it. At this point. So we have been, we had our meeting on the 27th last month, and I've kind of been working outside of the contract just to ensure that we are, trying to move forward as quickly as we can and go through a process. As Cindy mentioned, that meeting on the 27th basically is to update that committee on the work that we're going to be doing before the end of June. And we have some initial products that we're going to get before that committee for next week, which include the first 4 sections of the open space and recreation plan. Those are the sections like the community setting, the planning process, kind of your run-the-mill type sections that would basically set up the process for the plan. As you may know, in 2019, PVPC assisted with the assistance of a colleague of mine who worked with the committee in setting up the community survey, as well as the community meeting that took place in December. And so that's going to be a component that's going to be addressed in this particular plan under what would be Section 6 of the plan. It's a very prescribed process, and each section is, there's specific things that need to be addressed within those sections. And, we're going about it methodically, understanding there are some components that we're going to need some assistance, especially by the town. Specifically Section 5, which is supposed to get an inventory of your protected lands, as well as, so it, we are trying at all fronts to gather the information to produce a plan that the Open Space and Recreation Plan Update Group will be reviewing in time. I think that summarizes the work that we're doing. And I think, Cindy invited us here just to maybe gather any thoughts that you may have with regards to the update, understanding that, I know that I think Janet was the one at the last meeting out of this group. I think Janet and Cindy were the ones at the previous meeting. But yeah, I think, your support and any insights that you can provide would be helpful in this process. And I think we're just here to be sponges, take notes, and include those considerations within the plan. And obviously, those considerations would be reviewed by the Open Space and Recreation Plan Update Group when the plan is in draft form. So that's our goal. So Cindy, I don't know if you want to chat anything.
Let me ask a few questions here and give you a little background. So for the last several meetings, this group has been looking at town maps, assessors maps. There's a varied background in this group, people that lived here for a long time, multiple generations. April's a realtor. She knows a lot about the properties. And we've been looking and becoming aware of lands that could be of conservation value. In the meantime, we also had Mark Walmsley from Kestrel Land Trust come and see us several meetings ago to talk in general about conservation. And at this juncture, I will tell the whole committee that I did reach out to Mark and ask for specific land or parcels that he would want to make sure we included, and I didn't get any answer. So I apologize for him not getting back to us on that, as I asked. And we've started an Excel spreadsheet, which we are sort of going along with kind of on the slow basis. We, as you heard in our minutes, identified the importance of not speaking specifically about landowners as owners in our meetings, nor addresses. We are only looking at parcels. And in the meantime, we have some general guidelines that we've thrown around for a while. One of the things I'm not able to do right now, because I can't figure out how to share the screen, is a draft document that I came up with, which is a combination of general considerations when we think about preserving or conserving lands, and the other is some specific locations, but stated in a general way, such as areas north of Cold Spring and Lead Mine Roads, or a greenway network and a wildlife corridor which stretches from the Manhan up to Pomeroy Mountain and including Little Mountain. Those are general ways of thinking of things. So here's my question to you, Ken. What is the best way to identify what is needed for the open space and recreation plan?
Well, I would say that, any consideration that this group may have been discussing over time is definitely worthwhile to include in the plan. Obviously, if there's parcels that you're looking at, just addressing them within the narrative of the plan is what we probably should be doing. I think that there probably would be a filter by which either this group or the open space and recreation plan update group would be, drawing attention to it, or saying that, suggesting language to, purvey that idea. I do think that, Cindy, if there were some general consensus items that are helpful for this process, that, we would share them at the following meeting with the wider group to see how they can be incorporated within the plan. As I mentioned, this is very prescriptive. Communities have to do this if they want to be, if they want to take advantage of any park or trail type grants. And it's obvious that, through the various updates over time, this is a town that, really appreciates that. So, I think understanding that this group may have some consensus of ideas, we probably would incorporate that into a draft wherever it would fit, and then have the review process take place, or at least, included it in an appendix, just so that the discussion and the point is put across there that.
Do you think there should be specific parcels identified? Is that what you're saying? Or more of a, as I said, general considerations and like areas?
Yeah, I think that's fine. Obviously there's always and this is, as someone that does municipal land use and, working as a town planner in the past, there's always the sensitivity of identifying some private person's land and saying, we want this to be preserved. And that private owner might say, you can't tell me what to do. The zoning bylaw exists for me to develop if I can develop. So I think generally identifying locations in town that you may want to pursue, engaging in conserving that in perpetuity. This plan is going to exist as its own, but the town also has other documents like the master plan, which, as Cindy mentioned, I'm also working on with the master plan implementation committee. So in working in concert with each other, I think it really would get the perspective of the committee across. Either way, it's very clear in those conversations and that committee as well that there is a need to preserve certain parcels, or you have ideas of where you want to ensure that no development occurs, or you really want to control that development that may occur over there. So I think that's just a general comment, Cindy.
Okay. So does anybody else want to raise questions or have general discussion now, or should I go through this draft that I can't share with you? Anybody?
Well, it seems like we should agree on what general areas we submit to the OSRP committee.
Right.
I don't know if we should do that by email or what.
Do you want me to read the ones you saw the draft today, Diana? I could read the general areas now, and then people could tell me if there's others that we should list. Would that be helpful? Anybody?
Yeah, I think that would be helpful.
Okay. So the general areas, I have two sections here. One is general considerations, and the other is locations. And one of them was one that actually Diana had identified for one of the grant applications she did. And it's areas forming a greenway network and wildlife corridor stretching roughly east-west across Southampton from the Manhan River and the proposed rail trail to the Pomeroy Mountain and beyond to the Holyoke Water Protection District, Tycarmody Reservoir. And this area would include the lands surrounding as well as the actual Little Mountain and Pomeroy Mountain. That's kind of broad, right?
Yeah, it's pretty broad. I think maybe we should break out Little Mountain, put that separately.
Make Little Mountain separate?
Yeah, maybe.
Chime in, anybody, at any point. Okay, take that one down. Next one was areas north of Cold Spring and Lead Mine Roads contiguous with the Holyoke Beagle Club and Clearwater Woodlands. Okay, that actually goes around to the other side of Glendale Road, including lands that are currently horse farm, and then the back end of a winery, that area back there. Okay.
I wonder if on that first one, when we, give, say it includes Pomeroy Mountain, if it would be better to have another subcategory that says areas around Durrell's Path.
Okay. Well, that's in the general considerations. The very first one is land abutting or contiguous to current conservation land, town or other conservation property protected by a conservation restriction or agricultural protection restriction.
Well, is the OSRP going to make a map like there was in the previous OSRP, with circles of where these areas are, I wonder?
Is that possible, Ken?
I'll have to look at what map products were already completed in the 2019 funding. I have to review. I'm not quite sure. I think that if we have to, we can maybe address that, but because the budget doesn't necessarily call for any mapping in this contract period, we'll have to figure that out.
Okay. Actually, I think that it might have been included, and I'm thinking specifically of Brittany Gutermuth, who's part of the committee, and I think she was working on that. She's pretty map savvy. I don't know if you know her. She works for Audubon, I think, doesn't she?
Yes. Yes.
She's pretty, and she's also, is she what, an associate member of the Conservation Commission, Marla? You think?
That is true.
Yes, she's very savvy about stuff. So she may have started to work on some kind of map already. So if that's the case, then that would answer Diana's question that a map could be included for the general area. That'd be good. All right. Another general consideration was land that is considered scenic or on a road designated a scenic road. That came up at the planning board last night, this whole idea of scenic roads in our town. More work needs to be done on it, but that could be a consideration as potential for conservation. Certainly any land or parcel that a landowner has expressed an interest in conserving, they could have spoken to the Conservation Commission. Maybe they've brought it up with the assessor's office, with our committee, or with a local land trust, or actually any committee or board that might get I don't know that the planning board would get a notice of that, but they might. So that would be something to be considered for conserving land. Land that is in a water protection district or over the Barnes Aquifer. Land that is part of a riparian corridor. Land that is considered to be of ecological value, that is containing endangered species, areas of biodiversity, or is a recognized wildlife corridor. And certainly land that's currently under Chapter 61, 61A, or 61B. Or, and I don't know how to put this politically correctly, but land that's at risk for development. If we kind of know that something might come up, that would be a potential for at least approaching the landowners to talk about their plans for development or for conservation, hopefully. Anybody else want to throw out areas that they want to make sure get included in a general way here? Marla, have you got ideas?
No, again, we're looking for the contiguous open space in the corridor, so.
I do know that the farm at the Four Corners down in East Street, Line Street, and County Road, that farm, that I've heard interest expressed in trying to conserve that area or keep it farmland.
Does everybody know where she's talking about? It's kind of on the Holyoke, it's on the corner of Southampton on the Holyoke line, down there by County Road.
Go past Bashistas and keep going until you hit the stop sign.
Right.
Yeah, that one, yeah.
Flushing stop line.
I think it's a big farm. So.
Yeah, and it's often growing, I think, corn. Is that what it looks like? It's got a, does it have some power lines going through it too? Are we talking about the same place?
I'm not sure.
The power lines are across the street. I don't know if it's part of their property. You know, they have the farmhouse on one side. They may very well own the cornfield with the power lines going through it on the other side.
Is that Southampton land on the other side? I should look.
Yes.
It is, okay.
Because now you're getting towards where Barbara LaFlamme lives.
Okay, yep.
They do own the cornfield with the power line easement. And it's map 30, parcels 26 and parcel 15.
How many acres is it?
On the western side, it's 16 acres plus. On the eastern side of county, it's 40. I can hardly see this. 45.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere in the 40 to 50 range.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry,
Okay.
I can't read this. Too small.
What map is it, April?
Map 30.
Okay. Don't we all have copies of the maps on our lap?
Yeah, we should all have copies. We
I
gave
have.
them to people. Do you have assessor's maps, Ken? Do you have a copy of those?
No. But is it available online?
It is. But it's
I can share a copy with you. I just made copies for everybody. If you want them.
Yeah, I see 18.26 on one side and 49.55 on the other.
Oh, your eyes are better than mine.
I see that too, and my eyes are older than yours, April.
So, for instance, for the OSRP, we would just say the Four Corners area. And we could also say that about the Swanson Corners, which is kind of the gateway area.
And I just want to confirm what I believe Swanson Corners is. Is that Route 10 and Valley Road? Is that what we all consider Swanson Corner? Anybody have any ideas on that?
That's a new name for me.
It came up at, Mark Wansley was at our meeting, and I think it might be part of that FRAP description on the Agricultural Commission. Is that right?
Yes, yes. Chris, have you ever heard of Swanson Corners?
Not formally, only since I've been involved in some of these meetings. I had never heard the name before.
Maybe we should stop using it because it doesn't seem to be consistently recognized.
Yeah, maybe just say gateway area or something.
Well, but that could be misleading too, because that could be farther down past, Cape Miller, Carl, and the Weingard area there too.
That's true, yeah.
And that's all zoned currently industrial.
On one side is, but the side where
Oh.
Tibby Wing is and Weingard, I think, not sure if that's in chapter or not.
You're right. That is
On the south side of Route 10. What side is that? East side of Route 10,
Right.
across from the Red Barn. Yeah.
So I don't want to get hung up on looking at specific parcels because we could, as we well know, we could do this all night long. We've done it. It's very interesting.
Maybe we could like have a target, like we would say 6 or 8 areas that we designate as for the OSRP as worth conserving or something like that.
Well, and I think it has to be the criticality of who owns them? Are they people from all over the country, nobody around here? Because when you have people who don't live around here anymore, then it increases the likelihood that that land is going to be gone. So it's a combination of how important is it for the broader picture and how likely is it that it's going to go? Because we've seen that a lot of times.
Well, are you saying we should prioritize either for or against the local landowners versus the distant landowners? I'm not sure I understand your point, Marla, for this purpose.
Well, I guess it depends on how likely the land is going to be developed. If it's something that you know they really are interested, but they're not, you don't really need to do it this year because you only have so much money, which is not very much. But if you have parcels that are of really critical interest and they're owned by people out of state, and this goes back to, if they're in their 60s or 70s out of state, there's a chance, and they have nobody left here, there's a chance they're going to sell it for development. So it's a combination of how, you know, you have to make the determination. But obviously, if someone says, I really, really want to put this in protection right now, well, then you work with them. But if they're hemming and hawing and it's like, well, eventually, and you've got someone who's lining up developers, maybe you, from Florida, you do something with that.
I think that's a good point. It sort of falls into this category, which I don't have the politically correct words for yet, is the potential or at risk for development, with consideration for who might be inclined to, they haven't attended the neighborhood outreach grant, or they're not responding to letters that we might send them, et cetera. We know we can't conserve absolutely everything, right? We know that's not possible, but if they fall into these general geographic categories, then we at least have them on our radar.
Right, how important the parcels are, because we're seeing forest cutting plans where the plan is clear cut, and where do they live? Nowhere around here. It's like, why are you doing it? To make as much money as possible. And that is their total legal right to do. Yeah. And I guess it would depend on, again, how critical is that parcel to the big picture. And, you know, clear cutting can do some good things, but when they openly say, we are doing it to maximize the amount of money we get. Okay.
A lot of that is, you know, is an unknown in the sense of, if somebody asks them, would you like to talk about conservation or some kind of tax credit or et cetera, they might open their ears and go, oh, maybe yes, or maybe not. You know, it's a case of approaching these potential people. But if they fall into some of these location categories or other considerations, like they're right next to another conservation property, or it's a scenic view, or it's an area of, you know, some other ecological value, then we know that they're on the map. They're not just a parcel someplace. Do you see what I'm saying? We have to sort of fit them into various categories. Yeah. So Diana suggested we have 6 or 7 or maybe a few different areas. We mentioned the Greenway and Wildlife Corridor, the ones contiguous with the Hoyok Beagle Club and the Clearwater Woodlands. And I've got down here areas east of Glendale Road down to the Manhan, you know, that big open fields that we know are down there, the horse farm, et cetera. We talked about areas east of Route 10 and Valley Road. Also that corner of Line Road, County Road, East Street, the area of Little Mountain. What other areas do we want to put on here in general? Anybody?
I don't know the other side of town very well. That's part of it. I mean, is there anywhere like around Gilbert Road, Brickyard Road that we should think of?
A lot of that land is owned by one family.
Yeah, there's quite a large parcel of an older farm that should be on our radar as well.
Is that across from, I'm going to use a name now because I just need to, is that across from Barry Searle's farm or his uncle's farm or whatever it is on Russellville? Is that what you're talking about? That area?
I think they're talking about Brickyard Road.
No, we're talking about Gilbert Road.
Gilbert Road?
Yep.
Okay.
Are you talking about the APR farm there?
It's GNAC.
Yeah, Ganasic.
Yeah, that's all APR and has been for years.
Oh, yay.
Good. Yay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not kidding, because when I saw them put a for sale sign, and I thought I'd be looking out my patio door at a house, and then, yes, so that whole area that I am extremely fortunate to live next to is APR.
Well, you're lucky. Good.
You bet.
All right. Any more general lands that we want to, that are not already conserved?
Well, can we just mention, I think maybe we should, that Mr. Hendrick pointed out 2 parcels that are contiguous with the town of Southampton land, High Street rear. And he said it would, and I have a feeling that those might be out-of-town owners next to it. He said if we could get those 2 contiguous with the block that's already there, that we'd have access all the way to the top of Little Mountain.
So maybe Janet knows where these are. It's at the corner of Maple and High. It's an 8-acre lot. Do you know where we're talking?
Neil Allen owns land at Maple and High, closer to Maple than we are. And I think Frank Wayne's sons still own some property up there.
Well, neither of those were names on the assessors. It was a Monroe and Loibel or something like that.
Froibel.
Yeah.
Those are out-of-towners, okay.
They're like right behind High Street at the corner of Maple Street, going up Maple Street.
Well, as far as an area, can we call this areas surrounding Little Mountain and approaching Little Mountain? Would that cover it?
I guess so, yeah.
All right, good.
Well, I know Neil Allen of Little Mountain and Maple is not interested in preserving or conserving or doing anything with his land. He just wants to own it.
Well, that's fair. Yeah, and, you know, I know in some of these webinars that I've attended, you can't get everything.
That's right.
Right?
He's a nice man. The Allen family is big in Southampton, but he's just not interested in it.
Yep, fair enough. All right.
Cindy, at one point with your meetings, wasn't it I want to say the Kellogg family, and that's not right. Oh gosh.
Riggs. You're thinking of Riggs?
No, O'Connor's. Sorry, O'Connor's.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Where's that land?
They came to some of your outreach meetings, right? And I thought there was some interest there, and I'm forgetting exactly where all their parcels are, but I think one was over at the end of Pleasant Street and East Street.
Correct. And I think they talked with Mark Walmsley, and we're not sure where that all stands.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, they own several parcels and acres on Pleasant, and then
Come closer, April. April, I can't hear you.
they own on parcels on Pleasant, and then over on Gilbert. No, not Gilbert, Brickyard.
So does those parcels connect to any of the ones we've talked about in general? We haven't, I mean, is it contiguous to the Alice Brown property, the ones they own?
No.
No.
Other end of the street.
Yeah, opposite end.
I thought they owned some land up on Maple or somewhere up there. Maybe that's somebody else.
Right.
Well,
Or even Fomer or Russellville, I'm thinking too, but I'm not sure.
well, you know what? That is covered in one of the things that I already mentioned, and that's a landowner has expressed an interest in land conservation.
Right.
So it's kind of included, and we know that there's other people that approached Mark or somebody after the neighborhood outreach.
Right.
So that's why I had a combination of general considerations and specific locations.
Yeah.
You know, I think we've kind of, I have a question for you, Ken. Once this is kind of brought together as a draft, can this come back to this meeting so we can see what the Open Space and Recreation Plan Committee says, especially if Brittany Goodemuth is going to put some ideas into it or others?
Yeah, I don't see why not.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure what the timing's going to be with the other committee. Obviously, the goal is to finish the plan.
I know.
And so, you know, we're going to be working with that committee to do that with a review process that will be fairly quickly
Okay.
and robust. But, you know, obviously, to share this with the committee,
Okay.
informative.
Well, in that case, does anybody else want to make any comments about this whole process? Because you could go home and you could think about it and you could email me and we could include it in this document that I will share with Ken.
I'm probably
Have we all seen this document before?
No,
No, okay, because I think it might be helpful in the discussion if we all had this in front of us.
I could clean it up after discussion of tonight and email it to everybody, and you could look at it and you could see if you want to add in, change any of it. Does that
Yes, okay.
sound like a
great.
good thing to do? I will do that, okay?
Thank you.
And this is Janet. I'm interested, Cindy, that you said you did not receive the 2 attachments from Ed. They were sent on May the 22nd. One of the attachments is the Southampton OSRP Update 2027 Draft Goals and Objectives. And
You
the other,
said, yes, I definitely got that. You said tonight. I got thrown off by that because I thought you said he had just sent it out.
the 7-year action plan. You did get this. Okay.
I definitely got that.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have not discussed those. Okay. As long as you got them, that's fine.
Well, Ken, you worked on that. That's the draft you worked on, right? The 7-year action plan.
So that was it. I'm trying to think what I submitted to Ed. I believe it was those matrices, which included the goals that were identified by the committee back in November, and then also a discussion of
The strategy.
the strategies that were also identified to get, to accomplish those goals. I think
Okay.
one of the discussion points that we were trying to explore also was any actions by the town since the last update that and the status of those within, as you had strategies back in 2012, have they been accomplished by the town? Because obviously we will want to ensure that, we draw attention to that. If the town had goals back in 2012 that, through this time, through the 7 years that have passed since we started the process, if those things can be captured in the plan. Let me see if I have that document that I sent to Ed.
Do you want to, if you do, I can do the share screen with you,
Okay.
I think. Looked to me like I could a minute ago. By the way, I can now do it. Son of a gun.
Getting scary.
Will miracles ever cease? Well, I don't know how to do it now. A moment ago, it gave me the option of giving somebody else the opportunity to share something.
Well, Cindy, remember when we had this conversation this morning?
Yeah.
I think this particular setting is already set where Ed allows, or whoever's operating the meeting, it allows for the public to.
Actually, I just reset it. I know what you mean. No, it didn't have that automatic setting, but now I just did it so multiple people can share it. So if it's on your computer, Ken, you can do that.
Yeah, I have to find that file that I sent to Ed. It was those. Okay, that one and this one. Okay. So these were the goals that were identified. Let's try this again.
Everybody but Chris will be able to see them because she's on a phone. Yeah, there you go. Can you all see that?
So this was shared with the Open Space and Recreation Plan Update Group. This was work that was done in 2019. In your 2012 plan, you had 4 goals. Now the committee has suggested 5 goals, as you'll see by new. It also reviewed and included some new objectives, or reworded some objectives rather, particularly for goal 1, objective 2 and 3, that were revised, and then also goal 3, objective 1, to remove that. So this is, I think, the way that this is what's going to be shared in that plan as far as the goals and objectives, based on the conversations with the committee. And then also in that meeting on the 27th of May, I don't know if anyone had any comment regarding this. I'm going to switch to the other document, which was the 7-year action plan update worksheet. Let's see. And that's this one, where we basically went through each of the goals and provided a status and how the town has been working towards implementing those goals. So as you can see, for whatever reason, I can't shrink this. So I'm just gonna like scroll, and I'm doubtful that it's gonna give you any motion sickness, because I'm sure it's slow as I do the scrolling. So, you know, in a master plan or in a open space plan, you're going to want to identify the progress that has been done since 2012. If there's a new strategy or a way to revise that strategy, also include that there. We also, during this process, identify the responsible parties. It looks like the Open Space Ad Hoc Committee, of which you are, is going to be the responsible party for this first objective: increase capacity for management of town-owned open space lands and promote public use of existing open space network. So that, and then resource needed, and then, you know, a target date. So maybe this is helpful for the committee. You know, I think that, I'm sure on the 11th when I meet, when Eric and I meet with the Open Space and Rec Plan Update Committee, they'll have their perspective on this. But maybe this is helpful for you guys to understand what what type of process we're going through with engaging that committee. Go ahead.
Sorry. I see in here you have Open Space Ad Hoc Committee, and right now that is the committee name, but by the time you publish this, it might not be called that. So
Okay.
I don't know if you want to proactively change the name.
That's fair. Yeah. I mean, I think taking that note, I would have probably put Open Space Committee, just because knowing that you're going through a process of becoming a permanent committee, I would put that there. And if the review the review group decided to change that, they could change that. But that's definitely a good note. So yeah, this was a worksheet that we gave to the group to fill out and see where the town is with regards to implementing, examining whether or not these are still applicable. So yeah.
So Ken, the very top one that you scrolled, go back up again to the first one. It says in the comments, this is where I asked you the question. It says the master plan is a prioritized list of key open space parcels for acquisition, but it needs to be updated. I don't believe I couldn't find it.
I looked at too. So that wasn't a comment by me.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that was maybe a comment by Emily, and I don't know if that was a discussion back in 2019. I looked too, Cindy. I couldn't find that prioritized list. There are lists of parcels that are preserved in perpetuity that are in that section, but I couldn't find the key parcels for acquisition.
Okay, so maybe that could, I don't know if that could be modified because it's not quite correct. Yeah.
Let us put a note here.
Okay. Okay. Does anybody want to, I can forward this to people. It's still draft. It's probably not something you want to bother with. It's the open space and recreation plans, work, the update committee. Does anybody want to comment? If you want to see it, I have it in my email, so I can, it's in my file if you want to see it. Anybody interested?
I would like to see it. I'd like to get a copy of it, please. Thank you.
All right. It's draft, Charlie.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. Anybody else?
I received it on May the 22nd.
Well, that's because you are on the committee. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. That's right.
Very good. Anybody else want it? No. If you want it, just let me know. It's a work product. It's not a final thing. Good. Do we want to discuss this anymore tonight? This is big. This is important. So my intent is to clean up my draft document that I've been reading from, and get it out to all of you, and get it to Ken, and have it available for integration into the meeting that we're going to have on the 11th, which is a week from tonight. I love meetings. It's so much fun. Anybody else want to comment about any of this regarding the open space or recreation plan process? Okay. Then in that case, Ken, and Eric, you're certainly welcome to stay, but we just have a little more, old business, nothing much to just kind of go over real quick. All right, we'll proceed. If you say goodbye, that's fine too.
I'm gonna say goodbye.
Yeah, I'm gonna scoot. But...
Thank you for having us.
You are so welcome. Thank you for your work on this.
I will see you next week. Good to meet the committee, and I appreciate all the work that you've been putting into talking about this. I think it's really important for the town, and I'm glad to help try to communicate your needs through this process. So I look forward to possibly meeting you in the future if that's ever the case.
Thanks, Ken.
All right, have a good evening.
Yep, thanks, guys.
Is the 11th at 6 o'clock?
I think it is. Well, yeah, I think so. I can go back and look at that. So I just want to give you some updates. I did send a letter to the individual who is the owner of land that is abutting Durrell's Path. At this moment, I don't have the parcel number in front of me. Map or parcel number was in the minutes. You may recall this gentleman is somebody we wanted to be sure he was, that his brother-in-law also knew that we were in contact with him. So I did send a letter to both of them. They would have had it for probably a week at this point, and I have not had a response from either one of them. My experience, and this is my background, is that I always follow up letters with phone calls because, I just think it sort of reiterates how valuable we it is to make contact. Does anybody want to comment on that? If I was to make a phone call to this person? Do you all know who I mean?
Yes.
Marla, don't you?
I do. I think calling is a good idea.
Okay.
Yes, I do.
Calling is the fastest way to get an answer.
Yeah, okay. And I often put in letters, I didn't put it in this one, if I don't hear from you by X date, please understand I will be calling you. But I didn't put that in this, this letter. All right, so I will do that. What was some of the other old business that was in that, in the minutes? Somebody remember some of the other stuff we had talked about?
Cindy, just this is Chris. Just one small thing about that that easement question toward Durrell's Path. I think I understood that there is already an easement on the lower property to get to Durrell's Path, and there's no further need to do anything like the permissive easement I was talking about.
Maybe, Marla, do you have a comment on that? Because you know more about
Yes,
it.
it is totally legal to access the properties in the back through the lower property. This goes back to when April had given me, it was a couple years ago, the Lore's daughter, contact information, and we went back and forth and looked up stuff. There is an existing easement right-of-way to go through there. We don't need to make special arrangements. What is not there now is a parking space. Just because you're allowed to drive or walk down that roadway does not mean you can plop your car there. So we were hoping that once we get our forestry done up there, since they'll, have to have the trucks up there anyway, we're not looking for a massive parking lot like the size the church has, but something for a couple cars. Then people can drive up there, park their vehicle and go, because otherwise, technically, they should be parking right when the lower property starts. So you have a big hike before you even get to the town property. But
So
you can drive there.
Charlie and I walked up there, what was it, about a month ago, Charlie, that we walked up there?
Yes.
And
Where did you park?
Well, we went through Charlie's land.
Oh, okay.
And we ran into Mr. Lore, and my understanding was he was absolutely no problem with us walking through, but he wants to know.
Yeah. And the easement that people are talking about, is that for a wood cutting plan, or is it for the citizens of the town of Southampton to get over the property?
It is the citizens. It's not just the town property that's an easement for. There's all those other landlocked properties up there too. And again, if you're going to park on Lore's property, certainly, because that's what I do. I'm not going to walk a mile before I even get there. I call them and say, hi, do you mind? We're going to park there. And he says, no, of course, go ahead. But if you have the parking on your own land, you do not need to get permission for someone to drive through an easement. But yes, you can't just go park on his property.
And where is the documentation on that easement?
It's in the various deeds. We looked it up a couple years ago, back when, when I was working with Janine on it. And, and part of the hoo-ha was when the school kids used to walk up there and then they were being chased away. And someone who was an attorney had a fit and asked the select board to weigh in on it. So you have the Conservation Commission minutes from 1995 talking about it. Unfortunately, the select board minutes were in the safe in the basement of the building on East Street. That all got wet and moldy, so we can't see what they said. However, looking up, Janine looked up in the deeds, it's totally legal, and we had hired a, what's her name? A lawyer in Easthampton who lives in Southampton.
Sharon Adamski?
Yes, thank you. We had hired her to look into it, and, it's totally above board, legal. Mr. Lore cannot stop people from driving through. He certainly can have people not park on his property or stop and hang around on his property. But people have every right to pass through to the other properties. Now, part of the problem is we would need to put signage up that says, you know, once it starts being a private road, we should have a sign there. And we had discussed that a few years ago, just saying we would put the sign there that says so many feet, miles, meters, pick your unit of measure, to the town property. And then when when you got to the town property, we'd say, okay, here you are at the town property, and then a map of the trail, sort of like we have up on Wolf Hill, you know, that shows the picture of the trail loop. But before you put up signs that says, here's the trail, you have to confirm and make the trail. You have to pay for the signs and all of that. And that's what we were going to do, but then we got diverted because other people wanted other projects to be done. So we're now getting back to, we had the forest cutting plan done, and the day that the forester was going to put it out to bid was the day the governor closed down the state, and that was that. So he called everybody and canceled the meeting. So now he's starting to get back with them.
Okay.
But, you know, I have no idea how long it will take once the bids are out, and that's a few weeks, then to actually do the work and then get the money. I know it takes a long time to get signs made and designed, and after the wood is cleared, then we have to determine where you want the trail built. And this is why, you know, it's a little disappointed we don't have a friends group, because, okay, and who is going to go do that? Because every time money comes into play, you always pay more. You have to wait for the bidding, and as opposed to, yeah, if you raise the money, you can pay whatever you want to whomever, you know, you can get to do it, or do it yourself. But if we do it, it's going to take longer. And this is just one property, you know, so.
You're right. It's a combination of things. Yeah. Very big. All right. That's great. So, well, I don't want to anger Mr. Lohr, but I think the biggest issue is don't park on his land, but just walking through and being polite to him is really the answer.
Yeah.
There's never been any altercation with him, has there? Anybody? I don't think so.
No. In days of yore, he used to have his dog chase people.
Oh.
He used to have signs up, no trespassing, across where we were, Cindy.
Oh.
So those were existing 10 years ago.
But we didn't see him, right, Charlie? We didn't see him.
Oh, no, they're down now.
Yeah.
And, but, you know, his comments were, you know, I think it has to be discussed with him. And
But, I mean, certainly you can't step foot on his property. You know, you have the right to be on the roadway, not to step off and go on his property.
Yeah. I think that's, even myself, I couldn't be 100% clear that I mean, Charlie was with me, so he knew where to walk, but otherwise I might have been confused and gotten off.
we were on his property, though, Cindy.
Oh, we were?
Property, yeah.
Oh. When we crossed over from your land, is that right? We
Yeah.
ended up partially on his property.
Yeah,
Okay.
that pond there.
Yeah. Huh.
That's the beginning of Red Brook. But if you go up Walcott Road and then keep going, and then where it goes over the little bridge and then goes up to the sign where the town property is, you don't, other than being on the road, you're not on his property.
Okay.
Is that the only access to Durrell Path, Marla?
Yes.
Is there any way to come in from, you know, sort of the other
No.
area? No. Okay. Okay.
Helicopter?
Sorry?
Helicopter?
Well, you know, I usually use my broomstick, but, you know,
Well, there we go.
okay. I was up at Alder Pond the other day. I mean, Alder Former Pond.
Yeah.
And that's very different. Very different.
Well, it was Alder Meadow to start with.
Yeah.
It's just reverted back to its natural state. So it's not like the stream was created. The stream was there for quite a long time. It's just in the 1960s, they put a dam there. So it's just Alder Meadow again.
You suggested that if I run into, Barry, that I might ask him about it, and I will. But I haven't seen him, so I don't know what he thinks. And I do see on the assessor's maps a reference to town of Southampton land, which would have been underneath that pond.
Yep.
Yeah, so I don't know any more about that.
I have found it interesting because I had pointed that out, I think, to Diana or you, that I found owning 2 acres smack in the middle of the pond, and I had asked Martha, it's like I'm looking at the property card and there's nothing on it for what is the book in the page at the Registry of Deeds, what is the date of acquisition, absolutely nothing. It's just 2 acres owned by town of Southampton. I don't know under whose management or not. I find that really bizarre.
Yeah.
And Martha said she had no idea either.
I will say when I looked at it, it abuts the land that was in chapter, or is in chapter, that was purchased a couple of years ago. And the owner has been to the planning board. So that's public record. The Florks came to the planning board to talk about approvement an A&R for one of the parcels, which would be for his daughter to live there, which of course is allowed. And then another building permit came to the planning board last night for the property next to it. There wasn't enough information, so the planning board recommended having a more specific amount of information in order to look at it for the question of whether it is within or exceeds the amount of land that's going to be disrupted for the stormwater purposes. We don't know, so we had to get more specific information. But that land abuts that town of Southampton property. So if we had the right guidelines and if we had known that, that's really critical. Right?
Well, and he also just in January bought the 3-acre parcel there.
Right. Yep, I knew that. There's a lot of cutting going on there, isn't there?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So another piece of property is the land. Can somebody remind me what the parcel number is? April, the one up on Fulmer Road, the 238 acres that we knew was on the multiple listing service for $1,100,000 and then came off MLS. I called the realtor myself a week or so ago, who represents the owner, and it's what was it, 238 acres? I'm forgetting.
I think so.
Yeah, something like that. It's off MLS. This is what the realtor told me. The owner put it on MLS because this is exactly out of the realtor's mouth, thinking that an investor would find investing in land or gold to be what you would do at the time of crisis, like the pandemic. So that's why he put it on the market. That is only one building lot in terms of the frontage. There's only one building lot, and the owner wants nothing less than $1 million for it. So I don't know if we have any deep pocket investors coming to Southampton, but so it's still for sale, but it's not on MLS, according to the realtor from Five College Realty. So that's just an update on that. Maybe at some point we could send a letter to that owner and see what they want to do. Okay, any other old business that I can't think of right now? I know there was one thing I wanted to bring up. What was it? Nope, that wasn't it. I guess that's it. Any new business that people would like to bring up?
I don't know if it goes on new business or old business, but you just meant contacting the owner. Should we develop a protocol of how to contact these landowners and what to say to them, like if they're Southampton residents or if they're older people that live in California or something? I think the conversation could be very different who you're talking with. Should we sort of develop a protocol of how you would speak to someone about that?
There's a lot of ways to consider this. I think a protocol is a good idea. There was something else that came out in the webinars. One of them that I attended, I think Diana was there, maybe Marla, was to try to gather people, you know, like in a social way. And right now we can't really do that, but bring them together and just coffee and donuts or something and just get them to talk to each other. That's another way. You can't do it if they live in California.
We have some like 25, 28-year-old, 30-year-old people living in California and they inherited all this land in Southampton. They're going to have a totally different attitude, in my opinion, toward what they want to do with the land and how we approach them.
Good point. I'd like to put that on the agenda for discussion. If people want to contribute ideas to that, does anybody want to take that on as a sort of a draft process?
Yeah, I think some kind of a protocol of manners and ethics and politeness and how we talk with people. And you don't want to just come in and say, we want your property. No.
We can't do that. We simply cannot. We don't, as
We just
pointed out, we don't have any money to just go out and buy property. It's a big process.
We want to be polite and say, what are your thoughts and where are you going with this? And I don't know. I just thought if we have some protocol in line, how we approach different types of people might be a good idea.
I think that's a terrific idea. Does anybody want to take a stab at that?
I'll play around with it, but I think Diana might be good at it too.
Oh my gosh, again, we're not going to offer somebody else unless they volunteer.
No, I know.
A protocol for, I thought maybe, didn't we discuss somebody had a template for that or,
We
And a
didn't.
template? Is that what you said?
yeah, I'll look in that book if I can find it from, Catanzaro, the guy who was behind the neighborhood outreach. I think he might have some templates for letters like that, but
That would be great.
yeah.
That'd be great if you can find something. We could definitely put that on for another meeting to talk about more specifically. That'd be great, Janet.
Okay, I think the age of the person, the location where they live, you know, what they're inheriting, all that needs to be taken into consideration.
Okay. All right. Any other old business for tonight? Any other new business? All right. I guess then next meeting, I do think I might have gotten a call from Rini while we were talking, but I didn't answer it because it was, she didn't leave a message. It just looks like a wireless call that I'm not sure if it was her.
Oh,
Kitties come to Zoom meetings.
hello, kitties.
This is the smartest cat in the neighborhood. We well know that. So today's the 4th. Do we want to put something on? Is Thursday night still a good night for people? We could put it on for the 25th of this month. Anybody?
Okay.
Yeah.
That worked.
6:25, 6 p.m. Until we hear differently, it's a Zoom meeting. All right. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
I second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we're adjourning at 6:31.
7:31.
Sorry, 7:31. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
See everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care, everyone. Thanks for coming.